Okay, guys, welcome back to story time. Like I said, I'm not going to wait for people to get in here. I'm just going to start reading because you can start it over from the beginning. So, starting off with chapter 11 of Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. Chapter 11, Grover gets a Lamborghini. And of course, I forgot the microphone again because I'm that smart. Chapter 11, Grover gets a Lamborghini. We were crossing the Potomac when we spotted the helicopter. It was a sleek black military model, just like the one we'd seen at Westover Hall, and it was coming straight towards us. They know the van, I said. We have to ditch it. Zoe swerved into the fast lane. The helicopter was gaining. Maybe the military will shoot it down, Grover said hopefully. The military probably thinks it's one of theirs, I said. How can the general use mortals anyways? Mercenaries, Zoe said bitterly. It is distasteful, but many mortals will fight for any cause as long as they are paid. But don't these mortals see who they're working for? I asked. Don't they notice all the monsters around them? Zoe shook her head. I do not know how much they see through the mist. I doubt it would matter to them if they knew the truth. Sometimes mortals can be more horrible than monsters. The helicopter kept coming, making a lot better time than we were through DC traffic. Dahlia closed her eyes and prayed hard. Hey, Dad, a lightning bolt would be nice about now, please? But the sky stayed gray and stormy. No sign of a helpful thunderstorm. Or gray and snowy. No sign of a helpful thunderstorm. There, Bianca said. That parking lot. We'll be trapped, Zoe said. Trust me, Bianca said. Zoe shot across 2 lanes of traffic and into a mall parking lot on the south bank of the river. We left the van and followed Bianca down some steps. Subway entrance, Bianca said. Let's go south. Alexandria. Anything? Anything, Dahlia agreed. We bought tickets and got through the turnstiles, there behind us for looking behind us for any signs of pursuit. A few minutes later, we were safely aboard a southbound train riding away from DC. As our train came above ground, we could see the helicopter circling the parking lot, but it didn't come after us. Grover let out a sigh. Nice job, Bianca, thinking of the subway. Bianca looked pleased. Yeah, well, I saw that station when Nico and I came through last summer. I remember being really surprised to see it because it wasn't here when we used to live in DC. Grover frowned. New? But that station looked really old. I guess, Bianca said, but trust me, when we lived here as little kids, there was no subway. Dahlia sat forward. Wait a minute. No subway at all? Bianca nodded. Now I knew nothing about DC, but I didn't see how their whole subway system could be less than 12 years old. I guess everyone else was thinking the same thing because they looked pretty confused. Bianca, Zoe said. How long ago? Her voice faltered. The sound of the helicopter was getting louder again. We need to change trains, I said. Next station. Over the next half hour, all we thought about was getting away safely. We changed trains twice. I had no idea where we were going, but after a while, we lost the helicopter. Unfortunately, when we finally got off the train, we found ourselves at the end of the line, in an industrial area with nothing but warehouses and railway tracks, and snow. Lots of snow. It seemed much colder here. I was glad for my new lion's fur coat. We wandered through the railway yard, thinking there might be another passenger train somewhere, but there were just rows and rows of freight cars, most of which were covered in snow, like they hadn't moved in years. A homeless guy was standing at a trash can fire. We must have looked pretty pathetic because he gave us a toothless grin and said, Y'all need to get warmed up? Come on over. We huddled around his fire. Thalia's teeth were chattering. She said, Well, this is great. My hooves are frozen, Grover complained. Feet, I corrected for the sake of the homeless guy. Maybe we should contact camp, Bianca said. Kyron, no, Zoe said. They cannot help us anymore. We must finish this quest ourselves. I gazed miserably around the rail yard. Somewhere, far to the west, Annabeth was in danger. Artemis was in chains, a doomsday monster was on the loose, and we were stuck on the outskirts of DC sharing a homeless person's fire. You know, the homeless man said, You're never completely without friends. His face was grimy and his beard tangled, but his expression seemed kindly. You kids need a train going west? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I said. You know of any? He pointed one greasy hand. Suddenly, I noticed a freight train gleaming and free of snow. It was one of those automobile carrier trains with steel mesh curtains and a triple deck of cars inside. The side of the freight train said Sun West Line. That's convenient, Dahlia said. Thanks. She turned to the homeless guy, but he was gone. The trash can in front of us was cold and empty, as if he'd taken the flames with him. An hour later, we were rumbling west. Oh. There was no problem about who would drive now because we all got our own luxury car. Zoe and Bianca were crashed out in a Lexus on the top deck. Grover was playing race car driver behind the wheel of a Lamborghini, and Thalia had hotwired the radio in a black Mercedes SLK so she could pick up the alt rock stations from DC. Join you? I asked. She shrugged, so I climbed into the shotgun seat. The radio was playing the White Stripes. I knew the song because it was one of the only CDs I owned that my mom liked. She said it reminded her of Led Zeppelin. Thinking about my mom made me sad, but because it didn't really seem likely I'd be home for Christmas. I might not live that long. Nice coat, Thalia told me. I pulled the brown duster around me, thankful for the warmth. Yeah, but the Nemean lion wasn't the monster we were looking for. Not even close. We've got a long way to go. Whatever this mystery monster is, the general said it would come for you. They wanted to isolate you from the group, so the monster will appear and battle you one-on-one. He said that? Well, something like that, yeah. That's great. I love being used as bait. No idea what the monster might be? She shook her head morosely. But you know where we're going, don't you? San Francisco? That's where Artemis was heading. I remembered something Annabeth had said at the dance, how her dad was moving to San Francisco and there was no way she could go. Half-bloods couldn't live there. Why? I asked. What's so bad about San Francisco? The mist is really thick there because the Mountain of Despair is so near. Titan magic, what's left of it, still lingers. Monsters are attracted to that area like you wouldn't believe. What's the Mountain of Despair? Dahlia raised an eyebrow. You really don't know? Ask stupid Zoe. She's the expert. She glared out the windshield. I wanted to ask her what she was talking about, but I also didn't want to sound like an idiot. I hated feeling like Thalia knew more than I did, so I kept my mouth shut. The afternoon sun shone through the steel mesh side of the freight car, casting a shadow across Thalia's face. I thought about how different she was from Zoe. Zoe, all formal and aloof, like a princess. Thalia, with her ratty clothes and her rebel attitude. But there was something similar about them, too. The same kind of toughness. Right now, sitting in the shadows with a gloomy expression, Thalia looked a lot like one of the hunters. Then suddenly it hit me. That's why you don't get along with Zoe. Thalia frowned. What? The hunters tried to recruit you, I guessed. Her eyes got dangerously bright. I thought she was going to zap me out of the Mercedes, but she just sighed. I almost joined them, she admitted. Luke, Annabeth, and I ran into them once, and Zoe tried to convince me. She almost did, but, Thalia's fingers gripped the wheel. I would have had to leave Luke. Oh. Zoe and I got into a fight. She told me I was being stupid. She said I'd regret my choice. She said Luke would let me down someday. I watched the sun through the metal curtain. We seemed to be traveling faster each second, shadows flickering like an old movie projector. That's harsh, I said. Hard to admit Zoe was right. She wasn't right. Luke never let me down. Never. We'll have to fight him, I said. There's no way around it. Thalia didn't answer. You haven't seen him lately, I warned. I know it's hard to believe, but I'll do what I have to, even if that means killing him. Do me a favor, she said. Get out of my car. I felt so bad for her, I didn't argue. As I was about to leave, she said, Percy. When I looked back, her eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger or sadness. Annabeth wanted to join the hunters too. Maybe you should think about why. Before I could respond, she raised the power windows and shut me out. I sat in the driver's seat of Grover's Lamborghini. Grover was asleep in the back. He'd finally given up trying to impress Zoe and Bianca with his pipe music after he played Poison Ivy and caused that very stuff to sprout from their Lexus's air conditioner. As I watched the sun go down, I thought of Annabeth. I was afraid to go to sleep. I was worried what I might dream. Oh, don't be afraid of dreams, a voice said right next to me. I looked over. Somehow, I wasn't surprised to find the homeless guy from the rail yard sitting in the shotgun seat. His jeans were so worn out they were almost white. His coat was ripped with stuff coming out. He looked kind of like a teddy bear that had been run over by a truck. If it weren't for dreams, he said, I wouldn't know half the things I know about the future. They're better than Olympus tabloids. He cleared his throat, then held up his hands dramatically. Dreams like a podcast, downloading truth in my ears. They tell me cool stuff. Apollo? I guessed, because I figured nobody else could make a haiku that bad. He put his fingers to his lips. I'm incognito. Call me Fred. A god named Fred. Well, Zeus insists on certain rules. Hands off when there's a human quest, even when something really major is wrong. But nobody messes with my baby sister. Nobody. Can you help us then? Shh, I already have. Haven't you been looking outside? The train? How fast are we moving? The train? How fast are we moving? Apollo chuckled. Fast enough. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. It's almost sunset, but I imagine we'll get you across a good chunk of America at least. But where's Artemis? His face darkened. I know a lot, and I see a lot, but even I don't know that. She's clouded from me. I don't like it. And Annabeth? He frowned. Oh, you mean that girl you lost? I don't know. I tried not to feel mad. I knew the gods had a hard time taking mortals seriously, even half-bloods. We lived such short lives compared to the gods. What about the monster Artemis was seeking? I asked. Do you know what it is? No, Apollo said, but there is one who might. If you haven't yet found the monster when you reach San Francisco, seek out Nereus, the old man of the sea. He has a long memory and a sharp eye. He has the gift of knowledge, sometimes kept obscure from my oracle. But it's your oracle, I protested. Can't you tell us what the prophecy means? Apollo sighed. You might as well ask an artist to explain his art, or ask a poet to explain his poem. It defeats the purpose. The meaning is only clear through the search. In other words, you don't know. Apollo checked his watch. Look at the time. I have to run. I doubt I can risk helping you again, Percy, but remember what I said. Get some sleep. And when you return, I expect a good haiku about your journey. I wanted to protest that I wasn't tired and I'd never made a haiku up in my life. But Apollo snapped his fingers, and the next thing I knew, I was closing my eyes. In my dream, I was somebody else. I was wearing an old-fashioned Greek tunic, which was a little too breezy downstairs, and laced leather sandals. The Nemean lion skin was wrapped around my back like a cape, and I was running somewhere, being pulled along by a girl who was tightly gripping my hand. Hurry, she said. It was too dark to see her face clearly, but I could hear the fear in her voice. He will find us. It was nighttime. A million stars blazed above. We were running through tall grass, and the scent of 1,000 different flowers made the air intoxicating. It was a beautiful garden, and yet the girl was leading me through it as if we were about to die. I'm not afraid, I tried to tell her. You should be, she said, pulling me along. She had a long, dark hair braided down her back. Her silk robes glowed faintly in the starlight. We raced up the side of the hill. She pulled me behind a thorn bush, and we collapsed, both breathing heavily. I didn't know why the girl was scared. The garden seemed so peaceful, and I felt strong, stronger than I'd ever felt before. There's no need to run, I told her. My voice sounded deeper, much more confident. I have bested 1,000 monsters with my bare hands. Not this one, the girl said. Ladon is too strong. You must go around, up the mountain to my father. It is the only way. The hurt in her voice surprised me. She was really concerned, almost like she cared about me. I don't trust your father, I said. You should not, the girl agreed. You will have to trick him, but you cannot take the prize directly. You will die. I chuckled. Then why don't you help me, pretty one? I am afraid. Ladon will stop me. My sisters, if they find out, they would disown me. Then there's nothing for it. I stood up, rubbing my hands together. Wait, the girl said. She seemed to be agonizing over a decision. Then her fingers trembling, she reached up and plucked a long white brooch from her hair. If you must fight, take this. My mother, Pleione, gave it to me. She was a daughter of the ocean, and the ocean's power is within it, my immortal power. The girl breathed on the pin, and it glowed faintly. It gleamed in the starlight like like polished abalone. Take it, she told me, and make of it a weapon. I laughed. A hairpin? How will I slay Ladon with a pretty one? It may not, she admitted, but it is all I can offer, if you insist on being stubborn. The girl's voice softened my heart. I reached down and took the hairpin, and as I did, it grew longer and heavier in my hand, until I held a familiar bronze sword. Well balanced, I said, though I usually prefer to use my bare hands. What shall I name this blade? Anaklusmos, the girl said sadly. The current that takes one by surprise, and before you know it, you have been swept out to sea. Before I could thank her, there was a trampling sound in the grass, a hiss like air escaping a tire, and the girl said, Too late! He is here! I sat bolt upright in the Lamborghini's driver's seat. Grover was shaking my arm. Percy, he said, it's morning. The train stopped. Come on. I tried to shake off my drowsiness. Thalia, Zoe, and Bianca had already rolled up the metal curtains. Outside were snowy mountains dotted with pine trees, the sun rising red between two peaks. I fished my pen out of my pocket and stared at it. Anaklusmos, the ancient Greek name for riptide. A different form, but I was sure it was the same blade I'd seen in my dreams. And I was sure of something else, too. The girl I had seen was Zoe Nightshade. And that is the end of chapter 11. Now, we are going to switch over to the not so little friendly story time with Stone of Tears by Terry Goodkind. And we're going to take just a few minutes in between the stories so you guys can disappear if you don't want to hear a, more brutal story. No. Wolf and Raven. So, like I said yesterday, I am not responding to comments. I'm no longer going to do the recaps. I am just going to read when it comes to story time. Because starting next Monday, I'm going to have a lot more to get through. And so, no, you're fine. It's just, so last night, it took me 52 minutes to get through story time with just reading. That is an hour and a half less than it usually takes because I didn't respond to comments. And so we are going to get started with chapter 37. The blood-red light of day's death oozed through the bones of trees lining the spine of the next ridge. Her green-eyed gaze left the well-hidden places where outposts of centuries were stationed. They were too far apart, she noted, or she would not be standing unnoticed where she was. She tallied the men in rank upon rank of tents marching up the valley floor below. 5,000 would be generous, she concluded. Horses were picketed to her left, near supply wagons all neatly lined up. To the far side of the valley, latrines had been dug in the snow. Cook wagons stationed between the men and the supply wagons were packing up for the night. Colorful battle flags flew over the command tents. It was probably the most orderly army she had ever seen afield. Galeans did have a penchant for order. They look very nice, Chandlin said in a quiet voice, for men about to be slaughtered. The two brothers gave nervous chuckles of agreement. Kalen nodded absently. That morning they had seen the army these men were chasing. They were not neat. They were not orderly. They were not pretty. And their sentries were not stationed too far apart. Still, Chandlin and the two brothers had managed to get her close enough to see what she had wanted to see and to take a tally. She had guessed their numbers at 50,000, and that was not being generous. She let out a long breath, its thin white cloud drifting away in the cold air. I have to stop this. She hiked her pack and bow up on her back. Let's get down there. Chandlin, Prindin, and Tossidin all followed behind as she slogged down the hillside of fluffy snow. It had taken her longer than she had hoped to catch these men. A blizzard high in Jara Pass had left the four of them holed up in the shelter of a wayward pine for 2 days. Wayward pines always reminded Kaelin of Richard, and as she had lain in her fur mantle, listening to the howl of the wind, she had dreamed of him while she slept and while she was awake. She was furious that she had to lose valuable time on the way to Aidendrill to stop this army from their suicide pursuit of the forces that had destroyed Ebonicia. But as the Mother Confessor, she couldn't allow nearly 5,000 men to die for no purpose. She had to stop them before they got close to the army that had plundered Ebonicia. They were too close now. They would surely make contact by the next day. The army sprang to alert as the four figures in white wolf pelt mantles marched toward them. Shouts erupted and were repeated back through the ranks. Tent flaps were flung open and men poured out. Swords were drawn, sending the ring of steel into the cold twilight air. Men with spears came running through the snow. Men with bows took up positions, knocking arrows. A wall of several hundred men put themselves between her and the command tents. More were coming at a run, pulling on clothes, shouting to others still in their tents. Kaelin and the three men with her came to a halt. She stood tall and still. Behind her, Chandlin, Prindin, and Tossidin leaned lazily on their spears. A man of rank tumbled out of the largest tent as he pulled on a heavy brown coat. He made his way through the wall of men, shouting at the archers to hold their arrows. He was joined by two others of rank as he stumbled through the line of defenders. She recognized his rank as he approached. He was the captain. The two men with him, one to each side, were lieutenants. When he drew himself to a panting halt before her, she let the hood of her mantle drop back. Her long hair fell across the white fur. What is The captain's eyes suddenly went wide. He and the two lieutenants collapsed to a knee. Every man, as far as she could see, fell to his knees. Every head bowed. The rustle of wool, the creak of leather, and the clang of steel fell silent. The three men with her cast one another glances of wonder. They had never seen the Mother Confessor greeted by anyone but the Mud People before. The only sound was the slow creak of branches in the cold breeze. Rise, my children. Accompanied by the renewed racket of movement, all came to their feet. The captain stood and gave her a smart bow from the waist. He came up with a proud smile. Mother Confessor, what an honor! Kaelin stared in disbelief at his square jaw, his wavy light brown hair, his clear blue eyes, his young handsome face. You're a child, she whispered. She looked around to the hundreds, the thousands of young bright eyes all fixed on her. She blinked at them. She could feel the blood going to her face. Her fists tightened as she shook with rage. You're children. You're all children. The captain glanced back to his men with an embarrassed expression bordering on hurt. Mother Confessor, we're new recruits, but we're all soldiers of the Galean army. You are all children, she whispered. Children. Silence swept over the gathered recruits. Most looked to be 15 or 16 years. The captain and his two lieutenants shifted their weight and hung their heads. Some of the men couldn't help staring openly at Chandlin, Prindin, and Tossidin. They had never seen anyone like them before. Kaelin grabbed the captain's lapels and began dragging him off. She growled to the two lieutenants. You two come along with us. She glared over their heads. Everyone go back to what you were doing. There was a rattle of swords being returned to scabbards and arrows to quivers as she dragged the captain out of earshot of his men. When she reached the trees, she pulled him toward a log and released him with an angry shove. Kaelin flopped down on a snow-covered log as if it were a throne. She folded her arms. Chandlin stood to her right, Prindin and Tossidin to her left. They planted the butts of their spears and waited in silence. She gritted her teeth. What is your name, Captain? He fumbled with a brass button on his open coat. I'm Bradley Ryan. His blue eyes came up. Captain Bradley Ryan, Mother Confessor. He quickly glanced away to the man at his right. This is Lieutenant Nolan Sloan. He pointed to the other side. This is Lieutenant Flynn Hobson. How many children do you have along with you, Captain Ryan? He stiffened a little. Mother Confessor, we may be younger than you, although not by much, and you may not think highly of us, but we're soldiers, good soldiers. Good soldiers. She was hardly able to keep herself from screaming at him. If you're such good soldiers, why was I able to walk unnoticed through your line of sentries? His face reddened, and he made a visible effort to remain silent. And is there one of these good soldiers, including you three, that is beyond 18? He pressed his lips tighter and shook his head. Then I repeat, how many children do you have along with you? There are 4,500 under my command. And do you know, Captain Ryan, that you are about to stumble upon a force 10 times your size? Captain Ryan lifted an eyebrow, and a little boy grin grew out of one side of his mouth. We are not about to stumble upon anyone, Mother Confessor. We are about to catch them. We've been chasing them. I think we'll have them tomorrow. She gritted her teeth anew. Have them? Tomorrow, if I hadn't caught up with you, young man, you and all your men would die. You have no idea of the army you are about to catch. He lifted his chin. We know what we are chasing. We have scouts, you know. I get reports. Kaylin shot to her feet, thrusting her arm to the right and pointing. There are 50,000 men around that mountain. 52,000 and a few hundred, he shrugged. We're not stupid. We know what we're doing. Her arm dropped as she glared. Oh, you do you? And just what were you going to do once you caught them? Captain Ryan smiled as he leaned in, sure that he could prove to her that he indeed did know what he was doing. Well, they're about to come to a divergence in the pass. I'm going to send a force up there around them to come in from each fork. They'll think they're being attacked by a large force. We're going to drive them back this way, where we're going to be waiting for them, beyond the Narrows, just ahead. Then we're going to retreat back this way to the Narrows, then split the flank, let them in, until they have nowhere to go. The pikemen will be bunched in the narrowest place. They're called the anvil. Archers to the sides will hold the enemy to the center. The force driving them is called the hammer. His grin widened. We'll crush them in the middle. He flicked his hand in a casual manner as he straightened a little. It's a classic tactic. It's called the hammer and anvil. Dumbfounded, Kalen stared at him. I know what it's called, young man. The hammer and anvil is a bold maneuver under the right conditions against a force 10 times your size. It's beyond foolhardy. You are a badger trying to swallow an ox whole. We were taught that with good timing and determination, a small force of good men in a tight place like this valley. Good men. You think that's going to count with the spirits? Is that what your pride and presumption leads you to think? Captain's eyes descended to the ground. You can't push a boulder with a stick. The only way to move them back this way is to frighten them into moving back. She thrust her arm out, pointing off toward the enemy again. Those are experienced, battle-hardened men. They've been fighting and killing for a good long time. Do you think they don't know what a hammer and anvil is? Do you think that just because they're the enemy, they are stupid? Well, no, but I think... She jabbed a finger at his chest as she cut him off. Do you want me to tell you what's going to happen, Captain? You don't have enough men to push them. When you send that detachment around, they will accommodate you and move a little. And as they do, they'll wing out to let your force in. That's called a nutcracker. Guess who the nut is? Then they will move for your anvil. They will be hounds roused to the scent of blood. After they've wiped out your hammer, there will be nothing to contain them, nothing to keep their flanks from wheeling as they drive in. They have battle experience and know exactly what to do. They'll split your pikemen and their archers and cut them off from their supporting swordsmen. A flying wedge, protected by shields, will drive into those pikemen. Crescents to the sides will trap them. Their armored cavalry will come at a full charge and rake down your wings of archers, who will by then have no pikemen to blunt the charge. You will all fight bravely, but you will all be outnumbered, perhaps 20 to 1, because you've already sacrificed part of your force to be the hammer, and they will all be dead by then. To fight a larger force, you must divide them and conquer them one bit at a time. Instead, you will have done the opposite. You will have divided yourself in half for them, so they can kill half at a time at their leisure. The captain stood his ground. We can make a good show of ourselves. You don't know how good we are. We're not novices. Every one of those children under your command will die. Have you ever seen anyone die, Captain? Not die like an old man in bed, but in battle. You will be run through with spears, shot through the eyes with arrows. Swords will hack off your arms, split open ribs. Blades will rip your bellies open and spill your guts across the cold ground. Faces you know, your friends, these children will look up at you in panic as they choke on their own blood and vomit. Others will be screaming for help as your enemy moves through the wounded on the ground and eviscerates them to make them suffer a gruesome death. The ones who surrender will be executed while your enemy dances and sings about the great battle they have just won. Captain Ryan's head finally rose. His lieutenant still stared at the ground. You sound like Prince Harold, Mother Confessor. He has given me close to the same speech on a number of occasions. Prince Harold is a smart soldier. Captain Ryan buttoned up two of the brass buttons on his dark brown wool coat. But that doesn't change my decision. Of all our choices, the hammer and anvil is the best chance we have against them. I believe we can make it work. We must. Chandlin leaned toward her and spoke in his tongue. Mother Confessor, these men are the walking dead. We should be away from them so we do not get caught in their foolishness. They are going to die to a man. The captain frowned. What did he say? Kalen leaned close to the young captain. He says you are all going to die tomorrow. Captain Ryan looked Chandlin up and down. What does he know about battle? He's just a savage from the wilds. Kalen lifted an eyebrow. Savage? He's a pretty smart man. He speaks two languages, his and ours. Captain Ryan swallowed. And he has fought in battles. He has killed men. How many men have you killed, Bradley? He glanced to his two lieutenants. Well, none, I guess. Look, I'm sorry. I meant no offense, but I know about war. And what do you know about war, child? She whispered. We're all volunteers. Myself 3 years ago. Almost no man here has less than 1 year. We've all trained hard. Prince Harold himself has worked with us, taught us tactics. We've won mock battles against him several times. We may be young, but we have experience. We were sent on this expedition as a final test before our assignments. We've been afield nearly a month practicing war games and battle tactics. We know what we are about. Just because we're young, that doesn't mean we can't fight. We may be young, but that also means we're strong. Chandlin laughed. Strong. You'll travel like women. He cleared his throat when Kalen lifted an eyebrow to him. Well, some women. You are not so strong as you think. You are soft. You have wagons to carry your needs. That makes you soft. You will die tomorrow. Kalen turned back to the three soldiers. My friend is wrong. You are not going to die tomorrow. The captain brightened. We're not? You believe in us then? She shook her head. You are not going to die tomorrow because I will not allow it. I'm sending you back. You are to take your division back to your command unit. That, Captain, is an order. I'm on my way to Aidendrill to take care of this. I will put a stop to that army of killers. Captain Ryan's expression hardened. We have no command to return to. They were wiped out in Ebonicia. That was where we were training, but we were out on maneuvers. We have the trail of the ones who did it, and we are going after them. These soldiers in Ebonicia were many times your number, and they were crushed by the force you chase. We know. Those were men we lived with, ate with, slept with. Oh, wow, that's progressive. They were our teachers. They were our brothers, our fathers. They were our friends and companions. He shifted his weight and cleared his throat in an effort to keep his voice steady. We should have been there with them. We should have been there to stand with them. Kaelin turned her back to the three Galilean soldiers. She put her fingers to her temples, closing her eyes as she rubbed in little circles. She had a headache from the worry of these young men all being slaughtered. She grieved for the friends of these men, friends and comrades who were killed defending their city. The faces of the young women floated before her mind's eye. Kaelin spun around, looking into the eyes of the young captain, eyes she realized that had seen more than she had at first thought. You were the one, she whispered. You were the one who closed the doors. You closed the doors in the palace, the doors on the rooms of the queen and her ladies. He swallowed and then nodded. His blue eyes were wet. His lower lip quivered. Why would they do that to those poor people? Kaelin answered in a gentle tone. The object of a soldier is to make his enemy do foolish things, either by making them too frightened or too angry to think. They do it to strike fear into your hearts, but more than that, to make you so angry you will do something foolish so they can kill you too. Those men we chase are the ones who did that. We have no command to return. Those men we chase are the ones who did that. We have no command to return to. It's upon us now. That is the foolish thing they want you to do. You will not. You will go to another command. You are not going to attack that army. Mother Confessor, I'm a soldier sworn to serve Gallia and the Midlands. In my life, young though you think it is, I've never once entertained the idea of disobeying my commanders, my queen, or the Mother Confessor. Captain Ryan lifted her wrist with his finger and thumb and placed her hand on his shoulder. But in this, I must disobey your orders. If you wish, you may take me with your power, but I will not otherwise do as you say. Lieutenant Sloan spoke up for the first time. And then you will have to take me, because I'll take his place and lead our men to the fight. Lieutenant Hobson stepped forward. And then you'll have to take me. After the three of us, Captain Ryan said, you will have to move through the officers and then every one of the men. If there is one left, he will attack and die in battle if need be. She drew her hand back. I'm going to the Central Council, and we will take care of this. What you want to do is suicide. Mother Confessor, we are going to attack. For what? For glory? You want to be heroes avenging the murdered? You want to die in a glorious battle? No, Mother Confessor, he said in a quiet tone. We saw what those men did to Ebonicia. We saw what they did to the soldiers they captured. We saw what they did to the women and children back there. Many of the men under my command had mothers and sisters back there. We all saw what was done to them and what was done to our fathers and brothers, our people. He drew himself up tall and straight as he looked with resolve into her eyes. We're not doing this for glory, Mother Confessor. We know it's a suicide mission, but we're all single. We have no families to leave without fathers. We're doing it because those men will go on to another city and do to them what they did in Ebonicia. We're doing this to stop them if we can. Our lives are sworn to protect our people. We cannot shirk our responsibility. We must attack and try to stop these men before they kill any more innocent people. I pray to the good spirits that you succeed in Aidendrill, but still, that will take too long. How many more cities will be plundered before you can bring the Midlands to bear on these men? One city is too many. We're the only ones in contact with these killers. Our lives are all that stand between them and their next victims. When I took the oath to serve, I swore that no matter the choices, no matter the orders, I would always put the protection of my people first. That's why I must disobey your orders, Mother Confessor, not for glory, but to protect the defenseless. I wish to have your blessing in this, but I will try to stop those men with your blessing or without it. She sank to sit on the log again and stared off into the distance, pondering the three soldiers. The 6 men waited in silence. Children indeed. They were older than she had thought. They were right. It would still take her some time to get to Aidendrill, and more time yet to raise armies to hunt down these killers. In the meantime, they would go on killing. How many would have to die waiting for help from the Central Council? She wished she could be anyone but right now but who she was, the Mother Confessor. She disregarded her feelings and considered the problem as the Mother Confessor must. She weighed lives, those spent and those spared. Caitlin stood and turned to Chandlin. We must help these men. Chandlin pushed his hands farther up on his spear and leaned toward her. Mother Confessor, these men are foolish children, and they are going to die. If we stay with them, they will bring a storm of killing around us. We will be killed with them. They will die just the same, and you will not reach Aidendrill. Chandlin, these boys are like the mud people. They are chasing their Jokopo. If we don't help them, then more will die like we saw back in the city. Brendan leaned in. Mother Confessor, we will do whatever you wish, but there is no way to help these boys. We are only 4. Jocelyn nodded. And then you would fail in your duty to reach Aidendrill. Is that not important? Of course it is. She pulled some hair back off her face. But what if the army who killed everyone in that city were going next to the mud people? Would you not want me to help if it were your people they would murder next? 3 men straightened. They twisted their spears while they thought, glancing over her shoulder occasionally to the three soldiers who also stood silently. "What would you do to defeat this enemy?" she asked as she moved her gaze among the three. "If you had to." At last Tossedin leaned in. "There are too many. It cannot be done." Chandlin angrily backhanded Tossedin's shoulder. "We are mud people fighters. We are smarter than these men who ride in wagons and murder women. Do you think them better fighters than us?" The two brothers shuffled their feet as they averted their eyes. "Well," Brendan said, "we know that the way they want to do it will only get them killed. There are better ways." Chandlin smiled. "Of course there are. The spirits taught my grandfather how to do such things. He taught my father, and my father taught me. The numbers may be larger, but it is the same problem. We know better than these men what to do." He looked Kalen in the eye. "You too know better than these men what to do. You know you must not fight the way the enemy wants. That is what these men are about to do." Kalen smiled at him and nodded. Maybe we can help these men protect other innocent people." She turned to Captain Ryan. He had been watching her speak in a foreign tongue with the three strange men. "All right, Captain, we are going after this army." He gripped her shoulders. "Thank you, Mother Confessor." He jerked his hands back, realizing with a fright that he had actually touched her. He instead rubbed his hands together. "It will work, you'll see. We'll have the jump on them. We'll surprise them and have them all on a pike." She leaned toward him. He backed away. "Surprise them? Surprise them?" She grabbed him by his collar and pulled his face close. "They have a wizard, you idiot!" The captain's face paled. "A wizard?" he whispered. She released his collar with an angry shove. "You were at Ebenicia. Didn't you see the hole melted through the wall?" "Well, I guess I didn't pay attention. I only saw the dead." His eyes darted about as if seeing them now. They were everywhere. She cooled at the pain expression on his face. "I understand. They were your friends and family. I can understand why you wouldn't have noticed, but that is no excuse for a soldier. A soldier must notice everything. Missing details can get you killed, Captain. This is a good example of a little detail that would have done you in." He swallowed and then nodded. "Yes, Mother Confessor. Do you want to kill the men who destroyed Ebenicia?" The three soldiers spoke up that they did. "Then I am taking command of this legion. If you want to stop the men who are up there, then you will do as I say, and as Chandlin, Brendan, and Tossedin say. You may know about battle tactics, but we know about killing people. This is not a battle, Captain. This is killing people. We are only going to help you if you really want to stop those men. If you are interested in having a battle, then we will leave you right now so you can get yourself slaughtered." Captain Ryan fell to a knee. The two lieutenants followed his example. "Mother Confessor, it would be my greatest honor to serve under you. You have my life and the lives of every one of my men. If you know how to stop those men from murdering any more people, we will do whatever you ask." She nodded down to the three men. "This is no war game, Captain. For us to win, every man must do as he is ordered. Anyone who doesn't do as we order is aiding the enemy. That is treason. If you want to stop those men, then you are all going to have to turn command over to me. And you can't change your mind if the task becomes grim. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mother Confessor, I understand." She looked to the other two. "And you?" "I am honored to serve under you, Mother Confessor." "As am I, Mother Confessor." Kaelin motioned them up and then drew her fur mantle closed. "I must get to Aidendrill. It is of the utmost importance, but I will help you begin this. We will tell you what must be done. I can give you only a day or two. We will help you begin the killing, and then we must be on our way." "Mother Confessor, what of the wizard?" Kaelin looked at him from under her eyebrows. "You leave the wizard to me. Do you understand? He is mine. I will handle it." Kaelin looked at him from under her eyebrows. "You leave the wizard... All right. What do you want us to do first?" Kaelin walked between the captain and one of the lieutenants. "The first thing you have to do is get me a horse." Chandlin leapt forward and gripped her arm, slowing her as he put his head close to hers. His tone was angry with suspicion. "Why do you want a horse? Where are you going?" She came to a halt, pulling her arm free. She took in all six men. "Do you have any idea what it is I'm about to do? I'm about to choose sides. I am the Mother Confessor. If I choose sides, I choose sides for all the Midlands. I commit all the Midlands to war." She met Chandlin's eyes. "I cannot do that on the word of these men." Chandlin erupted in fury. What more proof do you need? You saw what they did back at that city. What I saw does not matter. I must know why. I cannot simply declare war. I must know who these men are, for whom they fight. She had another reason to go, a more important reason, but she didn't speak it. They are killers. You've killed people. Would you not want others to know the reason before they sought vengeance? You foolish woman! Brendan put a cautionary hand on Chandelin's arm, attempting to bring a little prudence to Chandelin's words. Chandelin angrily wrenched his arm away. You say these men are foolish, and they have thousands. You are one. You have no chance to escape if they decide to kill you. I'm the mother confessor. None may lay a weapon on me. She knew it was an absurd pretext, but she had to do this and could think of no other justification to allay his fears. Chandelin was too angry to speak. He finally turned away with a growl. She knew that in the past he would have been angry because if she were killed, he couldn't return home. She thought that perhaps now he was genuinely afraid for her. She didn't like the idea either, but had no choice. She was the mother confessor. She had a duty to the Midlands. Lieutenant Hobson, please get me a horse, a white or gray if you have one. He nodded and ran off to do as asked. Captain, I want you to get all your men together and tell them what's happening. Chandelin stood with his back to her. She stroked a hand down the white fur over his shoulder, over his father's bone knife. You are fighting for the Midlands now, not just the Mud People. He let out an angry grunt. While I'm gone, I want you three to start explaining to these men what must be done. I hope to be back before dawn. When she saw Hobson returning with the horse, her knees tried to buckle. Dear spirits, what had she gotten herself into? She turned to face Captain Ryan. If anything, she took a breath and started again. If I get lost and can't find my way back, you're to take your orders from Chandelin. Do you understand? You're to do as he says. Yes, Mother Confessor, he said in a quiet tone as he put his fist to his heart in salute. May the good spirits be with you. From my experience, I'll take a fast horse instead. Then you have your wish, Lieutenant Hobson said. Nick is fast and he's fierce. He won't let you down. The captain cupped his hands, giving her a boost up onto the big war horse. She looked down at the men as she gave the gray an introductory pat on the neck. Nick snorted and tossed his head. Before she lost her nerve, she pulled the big stallion around and urged him toward the slopes, toward a trail that would circle her around to come into the enemy camp from the other side. And that is the end of chapter 38. Sorry, 37. Well, he does shake her a little bit. Anyways, hey, Harley Siren. What do I look for first in a friend? Usually communication. How we vibe together. There's always a vibe check. I just like to talk to him. But Lumi's right. So I'm no longer responding to comments during story time. This is the end of story time, so I can respond to, a couple here and there. But I'm no longer responding to comments during story time because it makes me squirrel. I get off topic, and then all of a sudden, what should be now 48-minute story time turns into 2.5 hours. And no offense, I like to live my life. And 2.5 hours sitting here on a live, trying to get through 2 chapters is a lot. You didn't say you didn't define the type of shaking. You just said he might shake her. Hi, Tonks. But guys, and remember, if you came in late, you can always go to YouTube and the live is posted immediately after I'm done. Or if you actually start watching the live on YouTube when I do story time and you come in late, you can actually back it up to the beginning and start watching from the beginning. Okay. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you for coming. I hope you have a nice night. I love you. Be safe. Do your research. If you can't be good at it. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can message me on TikTok for friends, message me on Instagram if we're not. If you have another way to get a hold of me, well, then get a hold of me there. It's not hard. Yeah. At that point, you don't need instructions. Anyways, love you guys. You have a nice night. Bye.